Hey, welcome to AZCactusTac. Today we have one of those ubiquitous into 2025 videos, and I thought I'd share with you the 10 coolest guns, in my opinion, that I added to my collection in 2025. So with that, let's get into it. Okay, the first gun on the list is a AR-10. I do collect Cold War era battle rifles, and all the guns have been safety checked and cleared, guys, before doing this video. Yeah, so the AR-10 has been one of those guns that was on my list, which I basically had sort of chalked up as to unobtainium. First of all, so few of these were made they are pretty rare, and then to find one fully configured, it's super rare and super expensive. I think when I was researching some of the prices to get one, was around 20K. There was one on the broker this year, although there was looked like some damage on the stock and stuff like that. That was around, I think, 13 to 14 chicken nuggies. So yeah, it's pretty expensive. So I pretty much chalked it up that I wasn't going to be able to get one. But an AR-10 built off of parts kits in the 80s did come up. The parts from the AR-10 are from the Portuguese variant. When you get into these AR-10 firearms, you get into, their variants are done a little bit different. They're basically done by the deals. So you have a Cuban variant, you've got a Sudanese, a Guatemalan, and the largest is the Portuguese. That's who bought the most. I think they bought around 2,500 of these before the government of the Netherlands basically said, we're not supporting your sales into Portugal, which back in the late 50s, early 60s, they were trying to quell an uprising in one of their colonies, and these weapons were distributed to their paratrooper troops. So I bought it off of parts kits. It's a Portuguese variant. The Portuguese rifle saw heavy action, so this parts kit was in amazing condition. I decided to get it. I have been recently filming some content for a video that I'll do later in next year. But she does have some issues. The trigger is not resetting, so it's turned more into a bolt gun versus a semi-auto. So I've got to see if I can find a solution for that. But other than that, it still functions. And if you look at the history from a historical significance, outside of just delivering modern space age material into the military really for the first time, this is a gun that was really the predecessor of the AR-15. So the AR-15 was the genesis of the AR-10, and this is where Stoner's operating system. I have to be careful. There's been some debate on the internet about whether you can call it direct impinge and if that's correct. So I'll just call it the Stoner gas system, for lack of a better word. I don't want to get into a bunch of debates on what's correct or not. But the Stoner operating gas system was deployed in this rifle, and then it was basically miniaturized for the M16. Interesting footnote in history. Jim Sullivan was on the design team with Stoner. He was tasked with basically taking and scaling this down into the M16. And later in his career, he went on and worked for Ruger, and guess what he scaled down there? So yes, he was the guy that scaled down the M14 into the Mini 14. So definitely someone with a lot of experience as far as that. So anyway, that's the AR-10. And again, there's no order or anything. One gun is not better than the other. This is just what I thought would sort of be the coolest to share with you that I added to the collection in 2025. With that, let's get on to the next one. Okay, we got a pretty big girl that I added to the collection. This is a STG 57. Or really a Swiss PE90. So when you look at the Swiss sort of model names, let me remove my glasses and probably reflecting here. when you look at the Swiss model names, like the STGW are the military version, so there's full auto modes, and then the PE are what the civilians are able to take home. So in Switzerland, after you do your military service, you're basically able to take your rifle home. They neuter it and they make it a semi-auto, but basically everyone that serves in the military, which is, I believe everyone's required to serve there, then you take your rifle home. And if you do take your rifle home, then you're required to basically recertify every year, at least once a year. But again, the Swiss are very much a shooting culture. It's really interesting if you guys ever see some video on that culture and everything else. Oops. And of course, being on this slick table doesn't help. So again, this was added to the battle rifle collection. I'm gonna just move this back here so these things have something to grip onto. Um, Basically started out, the Swiss were enamored after World War II. I think it was the FG. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. It was one of the German machine guns. I think the FG 42. Roller delayed action. They were very much enamored with that operating system, and uh, said, "Hey, we're going to do one of those." And what they really wanted to accomplish in this design is not only did they want a light machine gun, but they also wanted a direct marksman weapon too, as well as a battle rifle. So this sight, if you ever research this rifle, this sight has more operating components in it than, I think they like to say, a Glock. So there's a very intricate amount of detail just going in the sight, which is just sort of odd when you look at this thing. You're like, really? But that's the Swiss, all about accuracy. The other really interesting thing is on this, and I'm just going to move these down now so I can handle this a little better. We are safe and clear. Um, and is for those of you into milsurf, you'll notice this charging handle. I'm not familiar with Swiss arms, so I'm going to say it's the K, maybe 31, but you'll notice if you are familiar with the Swiss rifles that this K design is pretty common in some of their milsurps, and this, of course, they carried over into this weapon here. So this weapon came online. Basically, the design was finished about 1957, came online in around 1960, 62, right in there, and went into service and really pretty much stayed in service all the way up until the early 90s. And what replaced this is the STG, I think it's the STG 90 replaced it, otherwise known as the SIG 550. So again, when I had my list, and I do have a list of Cold War era battle rifles, I knew of this, and I haven't finished the research on this rifle at all, to be honest. So my knowledge on this particular rifle, I would say, is still very light. I'm still researching it. I knew that it was considered a battle rifle. It obviously fell into the Cold War era time zone. And but I don't know, it just never really held a lot of interest for me. And then, if you guys ever see that Dave Chappelle, it's a comedic, the episode, and he's looking at, I don't know, like a upholstery for his car, and the devils are on his shoulder, and he's got one devil all like in a zoot suit, and the upholstery's like leopard, and the devil's saying, "It's leopard, man." So I had that voice. Hey, man, you don't have it yet. You're not going to have a complete collection until it's done. So I decided to get it. Um, Again, very few of these were brought into the country pre-ban from Switzerland. I mean, again, 20,000 chicken nuggets is not unheard of for that. And again, I'm like, wow, that's going to be unobtainium for me. But they do build some from parts kits, and I found a guy in the Midwest. I think the company is TT. I want to make sure that I get this right. And again, for educational purposes only, I'm not promoting any type of sales here, but TTE, he's able, I think he's a small shop and he builds really interesting firearms. I would say not on everyone's list out of parts kits. And so I reached out to him and I wasn't stoked about getting another weapon and having to support some obscure ammunition type. Like I think this thing was chambered in 7.5 Swiss, if I'm not mistaken. So I asked him, I said, this may be a stupid question, but is there a way to get this thing chambered in 308? And he's like, it's not a stupid question. We can do that for you. So I got this chambered in 308, or 761 or 762 by 51. And he even modified the magazines for me. I also had him make a shroud that will go over this. It has pick rail on top so I can mount some optics to it. I hear that this is an extremely light recoiling, heavy caliber firearm. I have not yet shot it, so next year that's sort of the goal. But when I looked at this gun, and this is an original sling that came with it, and you know how people like to produce the videos. These are my end of the world guns. I mean, man, if this doesn't scream Mad Max, I don't know what else does. So with that, guys, it's the Sturmgewehr 57, or the PE 57 for me because it's a semi-auto. So with that, we'll move on to gun number 3. Okay, let's leave the mountains of Switzerland. We'll jump over to rifle number 3 here, which is a AK, as you can probably tell. But why is this interesting? Well, this is a Clayco AK, and I would say probably at least one of the pinnacle units in my AK collection. I picked this up in 2025. Why is it important here? Well, this was really the first Chinese AK to come into the U.S. market. Um, and to put that into context of why that even matters, is before the Chinese came into the U.S. market, there were only a few options. You could get a Mahdi, which was still very expensive. And if you were to buy a Mahdi in today's dollars, you'd be over $1,000, if you can imagine. And of course, there were the Valmets, and the Valmets, just as they're super expensive today, they were super expensive back then too. Other than that, it was some Vietnam bringbacks. AKs were just not even on the American psyche the way they are now. I mean, they just weren't. But the Chinese came in and they gave the American consumer a lower cost alternative. And Clayco was really a company based out of Kansas um, that was the first company to bring what I would call a Chicom Type 56 um, Chinese made AK into the U.S. market. A lot of people will have this misconception, and guys, we're safe and clear here. We'll have a misconception that everything from China is shitty. When it comes to AKs, at least the pre-ban AKs before 1989, they're anything but shitty. They were made on military production lines. The quality is very good, and of course, coming into the U.S. market, the Chinese were, going into the process in the late 70s, early 80s to try to bring elements of capitalism into their economy, and obviously did not want to send over shit product. And so these AKs are very well built. They have a receiver that's 1.5 millimeters, also including the dust cover. So I mean, they're built pretty stacked. The riveting is fantastic, very good quality. Just some unique differences. They've got a hooded front sight. They'll have the vents in the in the gas tube versus on the gas block itself. And so I knew I wanted to get a Clayco, and I had to go into an auction to get it. And this one actually had a bayonet that was shipped with it. So I wound up winning the auction, and someone actually connected. I connected with someone. If you guys are ever into Chicom AKs, let me see if I can get his YouTube channel. It's like Girls, Guns, Ganja, or Guns, Girls, something in that order. You guys can start searching. But every now and then he'll put a video that goes into his collection. It's got to be one of the finest collections of AKs in the entire country for Chicom. Anyway, he said, one of the unique things about what you picked up is that there's a serial number engraved on this bayonet that matches the serial number of this rifle. And sure enough, I did validate that. I had no clue about that when I picked this up. This is Bakelite, or what I would call Bakelite. So it's the stock is of a Bakelite, or maybe a plastic variant or something. I know Bakelite's very specific, so I'm going to assume it's Bakelite. I believe these are definitely Bakelite, the handguard and the furniture, but it looks black. But in reality, this is green. If it's really, you probably will not show up on the camera, but it's actually green. It's a very dark black green, which I just think adds to the mystique. It basically has Clayco Sports. It's an AKS semi-auto chambered in 7.62 by 39. I think the barrel is around 16.3 inches. It was made in the Linghua factory. And one of the nice things here is alterations to this firearm are unsafe and illegal. Remember that. So the other thing I've got on it, the other grip is this is actually either, I think this is a Kyber Pass rifle sling. I just added that on for a little bit of color. And then I added to the collection, I did pick up a Norinco Bakelite magazine. For those of you that are into AKs and into AK mags, it's a whole nother world on AK mags. But the Norinco Bakelite mags are, I would say more rare than anything. And so I picked that up to go with this, just to give it, sort of an overall Chicom vibe. And then I like to build little collector's kits. I picked up a Soldier of Fortune from September of '94. And in this magazine, it featured the first ad for anything Chicom related. There's also an article inside the magazine on how Chicom AKs are coming into the U.S. market. So I picked up this Soldier of Fortune magazine. It was the first mention of Chicom AKs anywhere in the United States at that time. I'm a child of the Cold War, and for those of you, I don't want to say my age, but for those of you in my age group, the Soldier of Fortune, man, was like, that was the boss magazine back in the day. In fact, I love the ad for HK on the back. So I picked that up just to add to the overall collection. So so Clayco basically didn't last long. Clayco, brought this in late 1983. By 1986, 87, they were out of the AK game. I want to say they were out of business, but I don't know 100% for sure. But they were out of the AK game definitely by that time, even before the assault weapons ban hit in '89. So anyway, really cool AK, historically significant in the world of AKs in the context of the U.S. market. And just thought I would share this with all of you. Move on to number 4, which is my SKS. It's a Norinco SKS Paratrooper. So being a collector of Cold War battle rifles, an SKS is on the list. I think no one would argue that it wasn't a workhorse rifle during the Cold War era. I think developed by Sergei Simonev in the late 40s, right around the same time that Kalashnikov was doing the AK-47. He came up with this, which, was pretty advanced for its time, had a 10-round integrated magazine. And the like. And so I decided to pick one up, but for whatever reason, I don't know. I just was waiting. I wanted to get a Russian SKS for the collection. I still do want to add one, but I saw this and I'm like, wow, this is sort of unique. Now, this is a Chinese SKS. And so when you look at it, the SKS fell out of favor pretty quickly because the AK-47 was just better pretty much in every way. You could have 30 rounds, fully automatic. and more compact. It was just technology wise, it was on another planet compared to this, right? So this actually fell out of favor pretty quickly in Russia, but in the People's Republic, they licensed the technical data package from Russia and started producing these things in the 60s. Now, when you look at rifles produced around the world, this is definitely, in terms of volume, probably in the top five without question, maybe even in the top three. Like 20 to 23 million SKS rifles were produced around the world. Um, again, fast forward to the 80s, China's looking to get a little more capitalistic. They're importing AKs, and it's like, hey, let's import some SKSs. Um, and so that's what they did. Now, this paratrooper is what it was called, was never issued into the Chinese military. This was made just for the commercial market. So the barrel is shorter. I forget the length right off the hand. And it's just a more compact weapon. For whatever reason, it caught my eye. I can't explain why, versus just waiting and getting a Russian SKS, which is what I wanted to add to the collection as the battle rifle. But I really liked the look of this for whatever reason, and I decided to get it. Um, Bought it from a store back on the East Coast, and when they sent it to me, I was expecting a used rifle, but I mean, this thing was packed in cosmoline, man. Like, I don't know if it's ever been shot before, but if they did, they certainly repacked it because again, I'm not really big into milsurps. I say that, but I have a lot of old rifles. But I mean, it's like I'm not into the milsurps where they're encased in cosmoline and you got to do all this. So I had to go on the internet and figure how the hell did I clean this shit. So I started taking this whole thing apart, doing the cleaning and cleaning it out, and I mean, it was an interesting project to say the least. But I got it working. I mean, it's super smooth. Really, really nice. Rifle. I've shot it a couple of times. I want to shoot it some more. Got a little bit of Davenport drip on it. He's a leather maker, and he made this ammo case for it. I just thought it looked good. Put on some leather tape, give it a little more apocalyptic vibe. I think this was made in factory. Let's see here, factory 26 is where I think this was made. Based on the parts kit or the serial number of this, it looks like it came from a rifle that was made around 1957 ish. And they basically chopped it down. Now, when I got this, it had been neutered. The spiker bayonet was off. There was no bayonet lug. So it was definitely neutered. Maybe it came in after 1989. And I said, gee, I wonder if I could, bring her back to her full glory. And so what I wound up doing is I wound up buying um, a bayonet lug. I found a spiker because the groove was already in the stock here, and so I set out to do that. It didn't have a cleaning rod, so I found a cleaning rod for it. The sight block didn't have the holes for the cleaning rod. I got a new sight block, so I had all that stuff. I took it into basically the guy that I send all my sort of com block stuff to, a company here in Phoenix called SOF Defense. And very quickly we realized that this barrel was just a little bit thicker than what these parts were going to fit on, and so we had to take some material off the builder. And I say we in the colloquial we, it was he did all the work on it, but they basically had to turn this barrel and take some material off to get the bayonet lug on and the front sight block on. So it was a lot more work than I was expecting, but at the end of the day, I think it turned out pretty cool, and I felt really good about restoring her to her former glory. And I have what I think is just a beautiful rifle added to the collection. That's why it's interesting to me and why it made the top most interesting guns that I added to the collection. Another interesting thing about this particular gun is you got this rail. And for people that are really into the SKS, this is referred to as the rail to nowhere, and or a West Coast rail. And what's funny, in my case, more sad about that is that they have this rail and it literally fits nothing. There is no optic for it. There is nothing that clamps into this. There is no way that you can mount something on it. It's just a rail they put on. They obviously never produced anything that would work. It's highly proprietary and it just doesn't work. Hence, the rail to nowhere or a West Coast rail is what I was able to learn on that. It was shipped to me in the original box, which is where I pulled this sling from. And they even gave me they even had a little Chinese AK chest rig, but it doesn't fit, a fat guy like myself. So when I wear it, it's literally untied. I just wear it because it fits, these types of clips. So anyway, that is number 4, my SKS Noriko Para. Get a little more modern. We'll jump back over to Switzerland again, and this is my SIG 553P. So this is basically a evolution of the SIG 550. It's in a smaller, shorter carbine configuration. So this is, why did I want to have this? Why is it interesting? I think that the SIG firearms are just, they're just a work unto themselves. This is, I think you could argue that this is really an AK taken to the highest level. It's a long stroke gas operating system. It looks like an AK on the inside, except for some minor variances. But the precision that the bolt and the bolt carrier, it's just the machining and the precision. Yeah, it's when they say it's where a Rolex meets an AK, they're not kidding around. So this particular gun here, we are obviously safe and clear, is imported into the US. It's imported in very limited quantities. And it is also comes with a price tag associated with such. I modified mine a little bit. Most people will add the it actually has a really cool stock that's very unique to it. So I got a SIG brace. I sort of kept with the SIG family. I put some SIG optics on. I had these Cerakoted to try to match this green that came with the rifle. I took off the original handguards, sourced this M-lock from the distributor, which is from a company in Europe. I call it the most expensive M-lock handguard on the planet. And I basically mounted a light to it. I did have to do some fitment to get this light bracket to fit in the way that I wanted it to, and then added a little hand stop down here. Again, just a further evolution of the 550 rifle. We sort of saw the predecessor a little bit earlier in the video with the STG 57. That evolved into the 550, or as the civilians know it, the PE 90. And then that platform is basically giving birth to other types of variants like this. There's another very popular variant, I think, called the Commando, which is in even higher demand and even harder to get. And you can take it from there. There's no limit to the amount of resources that you can put into this particular line of rifles. So, it's very expensive. I had to save up for this one, and just a nice piece for the collection. I actually do shoot it. I know a lot of people do not shoot them, so I do have some marring on my Cerakote down there, but I shoot it in some competitions. I enjoy shooting it. I find that it's a very unique recoil experience. It's just a lot of fun to shoot. This rifle is just really cool, and really enjoy it. Um, I think now, SIG has come out. I think it's with the 556 version. I don't know, man. It's starting to look a lot like an AR-15. And one of the cool things about this rifle is that it has a very unique look to it. It's more AK than anything else, but then again, it's not an AK. It's its own Swiss animal in many ways. So it's just a really cool rifle that I wanted to bring into the collection. And I actually do use it. I actually do shoot it, and I enjoy shooting it. And yeah, so it'll have some wear on it. But really fun rifle. And if you get an opportunity to shoot one of these, you'll see what I mean about the recoil. I just find it's a unique recoil experience on it. And chambered in 5.56. Again, I'm not really big into specs, so I can't say a lot about it. The trigger is a traditional military style trigger, and probably not the best, although you can adjust it. I think when I was doing some earlier videos on this, I sort of found that it had three distinct walls. So if you're into the whole Geisley trigger and things like that, yeah, I mean this trigger is not going to be for you. Really cool rock and lock. The magazines are these polymer mags. You can also lock them together. I swear the magazines are just as expensive as the rifle, as anything associated with this rifle is, and extremely hard to get. I've been waiting over a year to get some additional magazines. So the whole experience, sort of like that Seinfeld episode on Soup Nazi, you just got to wait, man. And it is what it is. And don't wait and don't complain. And eventually it'll show up. So it took a while for me to get this from when I placed the order. And then I also ordered a Swiss sling and attached it. Although I don't know how, but this thing does come out like just putting it in and out of a rifle bag during a competition. I swear somehow these things work their way out, but I can't get them out. Like it really takes a lot of effort. So I have no idea. I guess they just find the magical sweet spot and they slip out. You can put a bayonet on this thing. It does have some grenade launching rings. The Swiss are really big into grenade launching, although I couldn't imagine launching a grenade from this type of a platform, to be honest. Unfortunately, the muzzle brake is integrated into the barrel. There are some other versions and variants of the 5.53 where it's not. You can reference this one guy's website called H-Town Werewolf. He has a variant where you can actually mount a suppressor on. So I have some adjustable gas, but there is some contraption that you can fit over this to get a suppressor on. But this is an integrated muzzle device into the barrel itself. So I would say if I had sort of one gripe about that, that would be it. But yeah, so this is the SIG 553P, and let's move on to the next most interesting rifle. Number 6 is the Beretta AR-70. One of the more interesting guns that I added to the collection in 2025. It's a gun you probably don't hear a whole lot about. Very few were brought into the country. It's a pre-ban. Made by Beretta. I think 70s through the 80s. More people know the Beretta AR-90. I think that's the one that's a little more popular. But those never came into the country. At least in terms of fully assembled guns. They have come in via parts kits. But this actually was imported. It was forderized a little bit. It's chambered in 5.56. And so what's interesting about this particular rifle, aside from it being a pre-ban Italian, 5.56, is that it really stems, there's a lot of relation to the SIG 550 and also the AK-47. So you could certainly say that the AK-47 had DNA in the 550, and it certainly has DNA in the Beretta AR-70, like long stroke gas piston operating system. What's more interesting, though, is that Beretta and SIG had a very successful partnership. I can't remember if it was pre-World War II or post-World War II, but they got together on a particular firearm whose model just sort of escapes me at the moment. And it was pretty successful. They decided to team up. After World War II, Europe, really wanted to go into a intermediate cartridge, but they wound up adopting the 7.62 by 51. But the intermediate mindset and preference, I think, from my point of view, was prevalent throughout Europe. And in the 60s, when the 223 came along and Vietnam kicked off, everyone was watching that with a high degree of interest. And coming into the early 70s, a lot of firearms companies in Europe really started to develop a 223 type of offering, and eventually NATO did adopt 5.56 as one of its standards. And so SIG and Beretta decided to team up on trying to develop a intermediate cartridge rifle, chambered in 223. They wound up having a falling out because the Italians were very much heavily influenced by the BM-59, which was a sort of a two-lug bolt operating system from the M1 Garand, and the Swiss were heavily influenced, of course, by another rifle we saw earlier, which was the STG-57, which was roller delayed. And that disagreement over operating system eventually split the partnership, and it was dissolved. And so Beretta left that partnership and deployed this firearm. What's interesting is that they were pretty much vindicated because the Swiss quickly learned from their mistakes and basically went in the direction of the 550 and really adopted more of the AK platform, adopted a more similar bolt design as what you have here. So it was just some interesting history, I think, even though it was diverged, also ties back into other firearms in the collection, including the BM-59 and the STG 57. Was just sort of cool and why I really liked this particular rifle. The other thing that really attracted it to me was just the look. I think this is just a beautifully designed, sleek rifle. It's about definitely 8 to 9 pounds. The ergonomics are surprisingly good. You got this pistol grip, which lets you really get a nice high mount. And the trigger is pretty good for a mil-spec trigger. This I think is probably middle of the 80s, 83, 84. But the safety you can actually operate with your thumb, something that anyone that collects a lot of these pre-banned types of firearms know that ergonomics were not necessarily top of mind. And all in all, the shoot on this is absolutely wonderful. Again, really, really nice firearm, and one that I really like having in the collection just from the pure aesthetics of it. All the research that I've done, I think this is one of the more rare. I know that rare is a term used a lot in gun collecting, but when you look at pre-ban rifles that were brought in to the U.S. market, based on the research that I did, about 1 to 2,000 of these were imported. So in that context, it is pretty rare. There's some unique stories. One of the stories that came across was that people, I guess, when they were buying these or they bought some of these, they actually got it in a Beretta shotgun box versus the Beretta AR-70 box. So, there's speculation that the Italians are trying to get around their own export laws and saying that they were shotguns and whatnot. I don't know. They just ran out of boxes and just needed some extra boxes is probably the truth there. But I thought that was sort of funny that, you go and you get this and it comes in a shotgun box. Again, it's got a flip up sight here, 150 and 300. And you can adjust your height based on the front sight here. And you've got a little bit of windage adjustment on at the back there. It does look like it has some lever style mounts here, but I don't know. There's a weird ridge that I haven't seen before, so I don't know. I would love to try to find some way to put a pick rail on top of this just so I could put an optic, and with my eyesight, so I would love to compete, take this out to a competition. But it is, guys, if you ever get a chance to shoot one, I mean, the ergonomics on this are just really, really good, given the age, given the 80s, really, really great and wonderful rifle. Okay, the next most interesting rifle I added in 2025, I'm sure many of you will be no stranger, is a Galil ARM, ARM. I think that stands for Automatic Rifle Machine Gun, if I'm not mistaken. This particular model here is a 392S. It was imported into the US in the early 80s by a company called Action Arms, so it is a pre-banned version. And really, I would say a historically significant firearm in and of itself. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel was finding that their FALs were having a little bit of a struggle, with the desert sand or the moon dust, as I like to call it, living in a desert environment. It gets into everything, and had some captured AKs at that time, and just saw that these things just kept churning. So they set out to design a new rifle. And of course, I have some obnoxiously long magazine here, but I just like the vibe. And they set out to design a new rifle. Israel Galili and let's see, is it Yakov Lior? I think were the two guys that were tasked with designing it. Galili eventually was translated into Galil for the name of the rifle. And about in the mid 70s, I think, is when the IDF adopted it. It wasn't, a lot of people think that this was, very successful. I would say that at the time, the US was giving away M16s like they were candy. The IDF tended to use those more. Obviously, they were free, but I think the soldiers also really liked the ergonomics of the AR-15 a little bit better than this. So that's a little bit of historical context. You'll see I have modernized it somewhat. I put on a gas tube with an integrated pick rail. Don't worry, guys. I did save the original gas tube. It could be restored to its former glory. When I bought this, it came in the original box. They said it was unfired. There were, again, it was another one packed with cosmoline. So I leveraged my experience on the SKS and set about cleaning. I did have a lot of cosmoline inside of the firing pin chamber on this particular rifle. And so I have not yet fired it. So my only concern is, A, did I put the firing pin back correctly? And B, will it work? So we shall see. But some interesting things here. The Israelis took a lot of inspiration, not just from the AK-47, but also the Valmet. And there's a lot of Valmet DNA, and certainly the Valmet drew its DNA from the AK-47. But there's some Valmet design characteristics here. You've got an interesting paddle release here. It is rock and lock, as is most of the AK form factors. Long stroke gas piston, looks like an AK internally. And then you've got this charging handle here on the right, and you can see safe and clear. One of the interesting lures is the hooks that hold the bipod. You can use that to open beer. You can also use them to cut wire right here. So a very, utilitarian firearm from that regard. I just think it's a very classic look. I find it interesting. I find the history interesting of it. I think when you look in the Cold War context, even though it's chambered in 5.56, It is, I don't know, an icon of like the Cold War, and I love the wood. I would never change that out, and just think it's pretty cool. Haven't shot it yet, so looking forward to do that. I actually did get an IDF sling all the way from Israel to add to it, just to give it a little bit more extra flavor. And of course, I added on this little utility pouch, and then of course we have a modern optic that's added on to this pick rail, which I did, have to slam in here a little bit, but we'll see if everything works based on those modifications. So with that, yeah, one of the most interesting rifles added in 2025, the Galil Arm 392S, imported by Action Arms in the early 80s into the U.S. Okay, so that's a great segue into the next firearm here, which is a Valmet. This is the Valmet M76. It is chambered in 223-556 and is from the country of Finland. And I think the Finnish used this to replace their RK-62, which they had deployed from about the early to mid 1950s. And I believe that was based a lot on the AK-47, as is this. Certainly you could say it's a long stroke gas operating system. A lot of AK DNA, but the Finnish have added some very unique things. For example, you look at the sight block, it's set back further rear. That's one thing that you'll notice right off the bat. The beer keg stock is also something that's very different, very iconic to the Valmet. And the bayonet, I got to tell you, this is really the sharpest bayonet that I've ever come across. You got to be careful with this thing. It's more of a knife. I guess if you need to skin a reindeer when you're out in the middle of nowhere to keep warm. And then this, it's a unique 3-prong flash hider. I think you can put wire in it and shoot a bullet to break the wires, is what I think that design is. Might be wrong on that, but that's what I believe I read that. Yeah, so the magazines are Rock and Lock, and they are proprietary to the firearm. If you do get one of these, yeah, the magazines, they're going to be a bitch to find, straight up. And they're extremely expensive, very, very expensive. So, keep that in mind if you decide to go this route. I have heard of some firing pin issues in earlier models. That could be a risk. They were breaking, I believe. Again, you're probably going to have to, if you do break the firing pin. I have shot this. Again, I shoot most of my collectibles, but I won't shoot this a whole lot just because of that one factor. If you break the firing pin, you're sort of SOL in today's day and age. I haven't really found any replacements for it anywhere else, and maybe there's someone that could fabricate some. But I mean, you'd be on a journey trying to fix that. The bayonet sheath, I think, is made out of reindeer hide, from what I read. I don't know if that's true, but I can't really tell. I would assume that the sling is also out of reindeer. But anyway, I just thought this was a really unique, very unique looking rifle. The 7.62x39 versions are very, very expensive. This is also not a cheap rifle by any stretch of the imagination, just because not that many were brought into the country. Although at one point, if you wanted an AK type of rifle, this was this is what you had. You had this, and you also had it in the version of 7.62x39. So the Valmets were really, I would say, the first. Outside of a bring back from Vietnam, were really the first AK variant to be brought into the United States. And then they evolved, and I think they ran the import, was basically from the 80s, pretty much up until the ban in 89. But yeah, so it's just a unique rifle. It's a great shoot, I have to say. Really love shooting this. It felt fantastic. I'll have some video up next year. But really enjoyed everything about this particular rifle. The ergonomics are fine, although it's very AK style. But everything felt really good. The recoil was awesome, and really enjoyed the shoot. So the Valmet, again, interesting rifle just from its history as being one of the first AK-ish variants to be brought into the country. It's sort of synonymous with that. And again, I really like the unique design here of the beer keg stand. I thought that was sort of cool. And then, of course, just, this bayonet. Again, if you do get one, be really careful with that thing, man. So, the Valmet. All right, one of the cooler things I added to the collection this year was this AK. It's a Type 56S-2, I think is the proper designation to it. One of the things you'll notice right off the bat is that it has bakelite for furniture, and it's a folding stock. So again, very unique right off the bat in terms of most of the AKs you see are like underfolder. This is actually a foldable stock. And again, all of the furniture is out of bakelite. I think the history of this is the Chinese did develop this for their military. Their paramilitary was designed to be as lightweight and compact as possible, some special forces application. I don't think it saw wide implementation because of the cost. Bakelite, in the early 80s was, or late, mid to late 70s, early 80s was probably not the cheapest material around. And so I would, assume that cost played an effort of it not really being proliferated in large volumes across the Chinese armed forces. They did export this to other countries. You will see photos of this. I forget the other countries right off the bat. But you will see some other nations parading with these types of rifles and having them in use. Even some police forces you'll also see. So this is a King's or KFS import. King's was a company out of Atlanta which brought in a huge amount of AKs in the 80s. Primarily Polytech. This is a Polytech AK. For whatever reason, I just like Polytechs. I really love them, and I like using them. This is chambered in 7.62 by 39. I do have a Norinco Bakelite mag with this particular rifle. And overall, I just think it's a very unique looking rifle. I was able to acquire it from an estate sale, actually in the state that I live in. But they had contracted, with the firearms guy, so he knew full well what these things are going for on the market. So I certainly didn't get a deal. But you don't see them come up all that much. This version was only sold, I think, from 1988 or maybe 87 to right before the ban. But the bulk of these came in 87 to 88. Based on the serial number, I was able to ascertain that's probably when mine came in. So they just didn't have a long time to get into the U.S. market. And so consequently, their rarity, just in terms of overall, volume, plus the unique application of bakelite furniture, plus it's unique in that it's a side folder versus an under folder, make this just one of those interesting AKs to collect, and an even more interesting Chicom AK to collect. And I was able to grab one in 2025. I haven't shot it yet. That'll be in 2026. We'll take it out. We'll put some rounds through it and see what we think. But all in all, I just think it's a really beautiful looking AK, very unique look and very unique sort of design and setup. So that is one of the most interesting rifles I added in 2025. Okay, and this brings us to our last rifle, which is a Setme C. So right off the bat, I think this is one of the most beautiful rifles I have in the collection. A lot of people are not aware that the Setme C is really the father to the G3, or in the US, the HK93 is what most of us would know that as. This is the rifle that spawned it. And really interesting history around this rifle. Trying to shorten it up, after World War II, the Mauser team is looking for a home. They can't do what they used to do in West Germany because they're not allowed. So they wind up in France. France, of course, does its own thing, and they're not super happy there. And then they go over into Spain. In Spain, they bring the roller lock delayed blowback system with them. That's what they invented when they were engineers for Mauser, which, by the way, was an accident. Interesting story around that, so that's for another day. But they start developing the Setme. Setme is basically the Spain's Ministry of Special Materials and Advanced Research. If I were to translate it into English, that's what it means. And so they're with this group, and they're developing the next platform for Spain, and they wind up working on this roller delayed, system. Come up with the Setme A, which is chambered for a different type of caliber. The Bundeswehr at that time in Germany is the German army, not the border guard, and they need to rearm. The NATO allies are realizing they have to rearm Germany to deal with Russia. So the idea of keeping the German military somewhat neutered is off the table. So the Germans come calling and are interested because they cannot get the production or the manufacturing rights from FN for the FAL, which at the time the border unit was using. So the Spaniards are all too keen to do some business. The team of Mauser engineers go to Germany. They meet with some Mauser folks, or Mauser at that time gets sort of laughed out of the room, but they wind up going to some former Mauser employees that they knew who started a little tiny company called HK that was making sewing machines, and said, hey, can you be basically our manufacturing representative and work with the Bundeswehr to capture all of their needs and requirements? And that basically set off two tracks of development, what would become the G3. But the Setme C also continued to develop in its own right and its own accord. It has about a 20-inch barrel. It's chambered in 7.62 by 51. The chambering is really interesting because when you look at the variations of the evolution of this particular rifle, it's really centered around the actual round. So Spain started off with, again, a proprietary round. Then they went to, I think, what they call the Setme, I can't remember, but it was basically the Setme B and Setme Light or something. But it was basically 7.62 by 51 with a lot less pressure, so it didn't beat the rifle up. And they didn't even know about 7.62 by 51. It was HK that told them about it. And then for the Setme C, they basically adopted that round and went on that. So the Setme C had some other variants, I think the D and the E, but eventually its main, where it evolved into was really the Setme L, which a lot of people know as the 5.56 version. So yeah, this is a hefty battle rifle. I added it to the battle rifle collection in 2025. It's stunning. A lot of people were like, oh, well, Setme C is not that great. In fact, it's pretty shitty. Here's the thing, man. This is a real import. It's 1966. It's a full-on Setme. It's made in Spain, probably in Santa Barbara, where their manufacturing facility was at. It is not of parts kits. So most Americans are familiar with the Setme C parts kits. This is not a parts kits gun. Mars Incorporated, the company that you see on the lower receiver here, basically approached Setme and said, hey, we think we can sell some of these if you can sporterize them. At that time, Americans weren't into a big military look, and so, with the wood and the metal, they took out the bayonet lug, although you could probably reattach it pretty easily with some parts from the parts kit. Added in some Weaver style scope mounting brackets here, and went to town. The Spaniards wanted to make such a good quality impression in the American market, they actually x-rayed every one of these rifles. Only 1,200 of these rifles were brought over between 1966 and 1971. So it is very rare. I wish more people knew about it. I wish more people appreciated it. But they have in the mindset the Set Me See parts kits, particularly built by Century Arms, which obviously have dubious quality and issues and everything that you can read about. So unfortunately, Set Me See in the American mindset doesn't have a great reputation, but this is something different. This is a real Set Me See rifle, the father of the G3, and just a beautiful, beautiful rifle to have in the collection. So magazines are unique to this, although I hear that you can maybe modify, or if you take a hammer, slam in a G3 mag, there are some differences. So the Set Me See magazine is different. It's sort of a pseudo rock and lock, I'll call it. I don't know, it is, but it doesn't quite work as a rock and lock for me anyway. But it's unique Set Me See mags. I did have to search high and low. One came with the rifle, and I wanted to add 2 others, and it took me a long time to find some Set Me See magazines. And they were covered again in Cosmoline. I had to break them all down, clean all that shit out. Took this out recently, took this out in the last week and put first rounds through it, and man, it worked flawlessly. I don't know that it's ever been fired, to be honest, outside of that. Based on when I got it and I did my inspections, it was like sonic clean at least. And after I took it out, I mean, man, it is dirty. That system, that roller delay system is super dirty, but I know it's very reliable. So anyway, that is the last of the most interesting firearms that I added to my collection in 2025. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned. Next year, we'll be going into more detail on many of these rifles for several others. There are a few items I'm looking to add to the collection next year, but a lot I have to catch up on this year for sure. So with that, guys, thank you very much. AZCactusTac signing out. Have a wonderful and happy New Year.